Hey, good Tuesday morning, and thanks for logging on to BAMWX.com. Meteorologist Michael Clark here with your latest long-range forecast. And guys, everything that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks in terms of just a flip coming, and we're waiting on this model data to make a big change, especially that of the EPS, has happened. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. A hat tip to the GEFS, I guess, as it's kind of seen this sooner, and it's yet to be determined if it's right. But big changes overnight, especially in the 5 to 10. I mean, significant changes. This is the trend here at the top, the model cycle difference, and I want you to focus a lot of your attention here. All right, in the North Pacific, in near Alaska, where you're seeing here. This is the 10 to 15 day change, where you're starting to see this feature here develop. You kind of see this finger of heights work into Alaska. And this is ultimately going to translate into a surface high pressure moving into the area and sending in an Arctic blast into the lower portions of the CONUS here. All right, so these are significant trends, and most importantly tied to the EPO. If you remember some of my email updates late last week talking about how the EPO was going to flip based on the frictional torque and the research on how that reacts. The EPO is related to the frictional torque. It's exactly what's happening, and it's pretty cool to see. Now, this is a look here at the 5 to 10 day and the 10 to 15 day changes versus the previous run. This time of year, we were talking a little bit earlier. I can't remember really the EPS undergoing a change this significant in terms of cold. And so what it does is it sets up in the 5 to 10 day, sets up an Arctic blast coming into the northern portion of the country. And then in the 10 to 15 day, you're seeing the colder air work down into the area. Out into the East Coast, there's still a little bit of warmth out ahead of this. The reason for that is because it's just a big storm probably pumping up some warmth out ahead. And then that cold will push east as this big Arctic high pressure starts to work in from Alaska and the northwestern Canadian prairies. I think that starts to push this colder air east and sets up a colder risk, especially into week 3 for a large portion of the eastern U.S. All right, let's look at the trends here in the GEFS. The old 12 to 16 rolled into the new 7 to 11, rolled into the new 6 to 10. It's massive differences, massive changes, and again, in fact, it's a little bit sooner than what we had thought. All right. I think that what this is suggesting is that we could get colder sooner than the 15th. All right. I'm a little hesitant. I'd like to see another run. I'd like to see another run of the GEFS and the EPS bite on that. But based on what I'm about to show you, it does have merit. All right. So I don't want to get on here and say it's a slam dunk and sign, seal, and deliver this big Arctic blast, but it's certainly trending in that direction. And it's certainly going in the direction of what we've been saying for quite some time. We look at the overnight run of the GEFS ensemble compared, with the last couple of runs. And again, you can see what I'm talking about, where we're going way above 10 and 30-year normals by the 11th of December. Again, remember, we've been talking about the 15th, give or take, the 15th to the 20th. So it's a little bit quicker. It's a bit quicker by 5 to 7 days, which it's not impossible. It's not saying it can't happen. It's just something that, we're watching. Regardless, remarkable cold from the GEFS and, something that certainly has our attention. Now, of course, obviously, the American data is always quite a bit colder than the European data, but the trend, again, is as I often say, a lot more valuable than the face value of the modeling. These are just remarkable trends in the last 3 runs. You have the prior 0Z, 12Z from yesterday, and then the current 0Z, and you can just see the trend here is up and up. And that's what I'm curious to see if that can continue into today's run. Nevertheless, regardless, the EPS is a little bit different because it has one little blast here, and then you work in the storm around the 15th, so it falls back down, and then it would go back up after the 15th, which might make more sense rather than just going completely in the freezer after the 11th because of our long-standing call of the 15th and beyond. So the EPS still is the favored solution And it brings us to our week 2 forecast. And then I say this because in this time frame, again, where this cold comes in, you're going to bring a storm up through here. You're going to pump up warmth into the east. It's just how it works. It's going to happen. And then after that storm comes through, it'll draw down the cold and pull it east. That'll happen the 16th and beyond into week 3. All right, so we're kind of telling a story here. So why is this happening? Well, this is something we've talked about for a little over 2 weeks. This is the MJO. And watch from the 27th of November, there's the 29th, there's December 1st, and then there's December 2nd, the latest run. It tries to get into this phase 3. Now it's running into a wall, and it's going back into the circle, and it may even try to hover in phase 2. And we've talked about this all along, that if it does not get into 3, okay, I'm not saying it can't. It may be in there for a couple days, similar to a 93-ish kind of deal. But ultimately, the overall pattern is really fighting against phase 3. And the phase 2 of the MJO, coupled with a negative AAM, which something else the evening Euro did last night has got a lot stronger with the suggestion of that, is really supportive of this pattern. And when we look at the zonal winds for the MJO, there's still strong easterly winds pushing against that upward motion in the western Indian Ocean right here. All right, and so it's really going to continue to hinder this process of getting that MJO to go east of really about 80 degrees east here. It's really going to be hard to do that. All right, so here's the trend in that angular momentum. Now, I say this with saying this. Listen, there's a lot of runs here that tried to take this thing negative back in a few weeks ago, and here we are. We're currently positive. So that is certainly absolutely a risk to this whole equation. There's no question about it. This run here, along with the last several, has been trending further down. Now, this isn't a substantial drop in the angular momentum. It's only -1. And in a lot of our analog years, that's these angular momentum shifts were subtle. They were not, -3 or +3 or anything like that, but there was a lot of subtle shifts. But the negative angular momentum correlation for December, as we all well know, is this big eastern U.S. trough, and it's a strong correlation with some desert southwest ridging. Okay. Now, with that being said, if you're following along, we've showed this before. I showed this earlier last week, and we've talked about this. This is the December MJO Phase 2 negative angular momentum. Okay. And what you can see here is it's just this very strong suggestion of the eastern half of the country being cold, and you've got this coming up in here. And this is important because of where the polar vortex, the stratospheric polar vortex, is located in here right now. Anytime you nudge up into this, you're gonna send the cold south like this with the surface Arctic highs. All right? And that's what I want to get into. That's what I want to discuss. Remember, we've related all of this EPO, this idea of the EPO going negative to the frictional torque. This red line, this solid red line that you see. Anytime we see positive frictional torque values, the EPO crashes. Right? The reason for the late October, first half of November severe cold was, in our opinion, a strong spike in the frictional torque that eventually led to a prolonged period of a negative EPO. Okay? And then when we get into where we are now, we're seeing this happen again. A strong spike in frictional torque, very similar to this period of late October, where the angular momentum tendencies, the AAM tendencies, are also very similar to this. So we believe this stuff is related. But you can see what happened here. The frictional torque spiked, the EPO spiked, and then it tanked. Right? Here, the frictional torque spiked. The EPO is about to spike for a day or two, and then it's going to go way down if we ask the European ensembles after last night's run. I hope you're following me here, because there's a very clear relationship with all this. So what that means is this EPO spiking, we believe the reason being for that, in conjunction with the frictional torque, is the stratospheric polar vortex. And what's happening is it's kind of camping out. You kind of see where the stratospheric polar vortex is located here in the higher heights, or in the higher latitudes, if you will. and you have the strong lobe here of lower heights and lower pressure. And that is essentially what's causing these huge spikes or these ridges to develop here in the 5 to 10 day, because these ensembles are not able to see the magnitude of this. They're too smoothed out. They don't have the resolution, the capability to pick up on it. So as it gets closer, like in the 5 to 10 last night, significant adjustments were made. But the reason, the placement of this argues that if the longer this orientation does this, the stronger the chances are of continuous shots of negative EPO bouts and Arctic highs into eastern Alaska and the northwestern portions of Canada, which will then send Arctic air down into the eastern U.S. This is very important. I hope you're still following, or if you need to watch a couple times, do that. But watch the next 10 days. Look at the stratospheric polar vortex doing just that. All right. And again, you're going to act to pump up that ridge east of that low pressure. You can see it in the surface pressure anomaly forecast from the European model. Watch it. Watch it go right to this big high, pump up right here, and then let's see if I can get it paused here at the right time. Yeah, watch this. You can see that this is where the vortex is located with the lower pressure. You see this? You have these strong low pressure systems, which will cause the pattern to become stormy late December, mind you, mid to late December, probably a big Christmas storm. And then you see pumping up the heights here, this massive Arctic high, 1034 high. These are 5-day averages, mind you. And then you're seeing this North Atlantic ridging trying to show up as well. This may be another piece to the puzzle that later down the road can promote a Scandinavian ridge, Scandinavian high, that can continue to all this kind of goes together. I can't talk about it all right now. This video will go 30 minutes. But you see what I'm saying? The modeling is picking up on it, and this is the shift that we've been talking about for a couple weeks because of the methodology and the research behind it. All right? That EPO is a big deal, and the timing of that and everything is very, very important. So our late December top analogs look like this. Okay? And they're cold, all in the areas that matter, especially for natural gas and heating demand. There's no doubt about that. Late December analogs very supportive of this. And I think we're going to be sending a series of Arctic highs in here. If that process I just talked about pans out, where we can actually develop a Scandinavian ridge and keep the negative EPO bouts going, you could be looking at a significant possible negative Arctic oscillation by January, and that's when the real sustained nasty cold could work in, if we can work in that in conjunction. Everything's got to line up, though, and all this stuff has to talk. Weeks 3 and 4, 450 HDDs. Last year we were at 345. You can see where we're focusing the majority of the cold. Again, up and down's possible till the 17th of this period right here. And then again, getting into week 3 and into week 4, more durable cold, as we've said all along. Precipitation, your main storm track is going to be here. I think if you're looking for winter storms, I think you need to be looking in this area here as we go throughout this period, from St. Louis to Indy to Cleveland, over towards the interior Northeast, maybe New York City, same areas that got pounded yesterday with the early season snowstorm. That's all I have for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, let us know.